What do you see the biggest challenge when somebody's right at the cusp of hiring their first admin? That's always the
Yeah.
scariest part, I think, of the business.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have enough money to pay this person,
Yeah.
but if I get this other person, it'll free up time for me to potentially create more sales and work on more marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first thing that I see is that people don't know what tasks that person should do, because they're still, like I said, in that overwhelm. They don't have their list of things that, okay, well, what drives my business forward? Coffees with potential investors, that's going to drive my business forward, right? Email marketing, not going to drive my business as much as coffee with an investor. I'm going to help someone. I'm going to write the email, then I'm going to get someone to help me with the execution of it.
Welcome to Real Talk with Gary. If you are listening to this show, that means you are either searching or ready to make a financial change in your life. This show is not only about real estate investing, but also the importance of mindset and the roadmap to a better, healthier life. Learn the daily routines of successful entrepreneurs and the latest market strategies and trends to stay ahead of the curve. Ready for some down-to-earth, north of the border Canadian talk? Here's your host, Gary Hibbert.
All right, welcome back. And today I've got Meghan Hubner. She is an independent consultant working with established businesses to prepare them for growth. She's got over 12 years of industry expertise in sales, also in business management of multi-million-dollar territories in the healthcare industry. And so we dive into what are some of the common areas that she sees where businesses fail or struggle. We also touch on the VAs. Should you get a VA, which is a virtual assistant? How to start your day, which is incredibly important as a business owner. We also dive into the 4 areas that every business should have, right? Operations, sales and marketing, human resources, accounting and finances. And we actually do a nice deep dive into each of those particular departments and why it's so fundamentally important to ensure that you've got them and how to set them up. Notifications, that's a huge one, right? Which ones should you have on? Because there's so many different ways that people can get a hold of us today, right? Whether it be email or text or Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, like I can go on. And so which notifications should you have on or should they all be turned off, right? And so very interesting conversation. I think it's important to go through this, especially if you're trying to start a business. And I think here's the other thing as well, too. A lot of times people get into real estate investing and they don't treat it like a business. And so it's important to, from the beginning, even though it might be small, to really understand the core fundamentals of it before it starts to get out of control. And all of a sudden you've got this large, portfolio and you don't know what you're doing. All right. So very important conversation I had today with Meghan. And now before we dive into it, I wanted to touch on something where I guess we'll talk about, I always touch on this stuff here, but some of the biggest mistakes that I've made, and especially more in the beginning. And I think this is one that might maybe resonate with you, was I was listening to experts on the real estate market, whether it be market crashes or interest rates, and then not really listening sometimes to, say, maybe my own intuition or my own gut. And so what I've realized over the years is that a lot of times these guys are wrong. I say all the time, but maybe 50%. And so here is the one thing I kind of go back and think about that one of my early mentors told me, and he goes, Gary, listen, just do what allows you to sleep at night. And that's what I've done. I try to do that. I try to pay attention to that. And so, what is it that allows you to sleep at night right now? And let's say now you are in a situation where with interest rates and where everything is, and I mean, obviously that's a hot topic, so I keep kind of touching on it, is that it's not trying to save more money at this point in time. Really, it is now looking at how do you make more money? What is it that you can do to allow you to create additional income, whether it's lending out your money, whether it's starting a side hustle, maybe it's working harder, maybe it's waking up a little bit earlier, staying a little bit later, right? Like, even for my own business, right? I've had to adapt and I've had to shift. And this is the market that we're in today. And so you've got to be able to adjust. I've said this many times, you got to be able to pivot. And the one thing that is always constant is change. And so just get comfortable with change. Get comfortable that these things where we are today will not be the same a year from now. And so adapt. And the quicker you can do it, the better life's going to be for you. All right. I know it's not easy, but you can do it. All right. And so with that, don't forget to go check out smarthomechoice.ca. If you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you guys are. Leave a review. And with that, take care. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Do you know what blockchain is? How about the difference between Bitcoin and crypto? After 15 years of explosive growth across the globe, it's important not to get left behind. We are currently in the mid-90s of the internet when it comes to adoption. Want to learn more? Make sure to reach out to onebitcoin.ca broker today. Whether you have basic security questions or you need help buying Bitcoin in a safe and convenient way, onebitcoin.ca is here for you. Get started today with Canada's Bitcoin partner, onebitcoin.ca.
Meghan Hubner, how are you doing?
Good. How are you today, Gary?
I am good. I'm excited to do this one with you. This is going to be a little bit of a different podcast that I've done in the past, but I think you bring a wealth of knowledge. So thanks for doing this with me.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So how has life been, with everything that's going on? And I know you recently came back from Mexico,
That's
I think
right.
you've been doing some real estate investing down there and flipping. So
yeah,
how's that been?
Yeah. We've been back now for just exactly 2 months, actually. So we spent the last year in Mexico in a city just north of Mexico City. So we were inland. We're not on the beach where most people think. And we had a great experience in Mexico. We have a real estate project on the go. You're right. We're in the middle of a flip. We're about 4 weeks away from completion. And then we are back now in Whistler, British Columbia. So we are also thrilled to be back home. It's wet, it's cold, but we're having so much fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What were some of what made you decide to do that, and what were maybe some of the challenges before we kind of jump into
in going to Mexico?
Yeah, in Mexico, exactly.
Yeah, you end up with a lot of cultural differences, and one of the reasons we kind of wanted to push the envelope and actually try it is because we thought it's something new to learn, which is going to be great. Some of the challenges with closing the property is that things take forever. Like, not only are you signing in Spanish, you're signing in English, then you have to get translators. So there's a lot more legal work, a lot more paperwork. The process was super interesting. We would go to sign documents and you would have the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, the buying agent, the lawyer, like the entire team is there in a big round room signing like papers. There's no DocuSign. There's, you're not buying real estate being in a remote location. You're all there doing the transaction together. Right. So that was really interesting. But yeah, again, the processes are so slow. We're a little bit behind right now, probably only about 4 to 6 weeks, which I think is actually pretty good.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, I'd say it's really good considering the renovation that we did. Like it was a complete gut. We took out walls, we did structural things. So that part was, the processes were a little bit slow and challenging and things, but all in all, we were so impressed with how much diligence was done and how professional everyone was. The contracting team that we have there is outstanding. They basically take care of everything from the finishes in the kitchen to the landscaping. So we paid one bill and it covers everything. This place will be turnkey when it's ready. Yeah,
that's really good because that's a difficult thing sometimes to manage in a different country, and you may be used to certain processes up here, and then you come down there, and then not only are you trying to figure that out, but then also there's potentially language barriers and contracts that are different than what we may be used to in Canada.
Yeah. And just the timelines are different. The processes are different. Everything was new and foreign to us, and it was exciting to learn. And we felt really well connected to the team that was doing the work for us. So we have a real estate agent who's married to the contractor, and the contractor oversees everything. So we have a lot of trust in them. My husband was spent about 12 to 14 months with them, getting to know them, touring properties and things, looking at pictures, remotely from Canada, until we really figured out, this is the first place we're going to go for.
Right. You know what? And so that's a great segue into why I have you here, because, managing something like that, and being that business owner, you got to know how to manage a team. You got to have the right systems and processes in place. So let's kind of start diving into that. But let's talk about your background first.
Sure.
And what allows you to have the skill set to talk about it. And then we'll kind of dive into, I think, some of the mistakes that a lot of beginning investors do, thinking that this sometimes it turns into this incredible, huge business, and they don't have all the correct pieces and people in place.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one thing that, one thing that I find with real estate is that the business grows fast, like crazy fast. I've worked with a lot of other industries over the past number of years. No other businesses grown like real estate businesses. They grow you can go from 1 property to 10 properties in a year. That's big business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't have those systems set up properly, I've done some mentorship, and I've seen where investors will have one account for like 10 properties. And whoa.
I know. I'm like, we're behind on bookkeeping. I'm like, no doubt you're behind on bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Really tricky.
So what were you doing before?
Yeah, so I spent the last 12 years in the medical sales professional within healthcare. So I was in pharmaceuticals, and then I was in medical device selling to the hospitals. And then when I exited the corporate world, I was the regional sales manager for a very large company, working within the province of BC, managing the entire province and a team of sales reps. And I realized at that point that I set the goal, I achieved the goal, but I forgot to set the next one. And so when I got to that level, I was in the position for over a year, and I thought, okay, well, unless I want to move to London, Ontario, there isn't a lot of room for growth here and opportunity. And then my wheels started to turn. And I always explain to people that, when you're in the corporate, you're traveling in this channel and you see things going on out there in the entrepreneur world, but you don't really acknowledge them. And then all of a sudden that channel that you're in has a door, and you take a step out and you're like, oh, there's a whole world going on out here. And that's kind of, when I got a taste of there's things going on outside of the corporate boundaries that I was already in, I was like, oh, wait a minute, entrepreneurship. And then I sat back and I started to dabble a little bit into entrepreneurship. And I thought, what if I took my 12 years of corporate, my degree in entrepreneurship, which nobody has, and applied it to the small business owner. And that's basically what gave me the confidence to leave the corporate world behind and start doing my own consulting.
You know what? That is such an important piece, is being in the corporate world, seeing it at a large scale. And in the beginning, maybe like, why are they doing all these meetings, or why are they doing like this and this system? And we get it. But then when you go into the smaller entrepreneurial world, when you first start out, those systems, those processes that they have in place for those larger moving pieces is easier to implement. And then you understand why it needs to be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the thing, is that it's interesting because, I worked previously in operating rooms, right? So I'm affecting change for thousands of people as far as standardization goes, as far as sterilization goes, et cetera. But now when I can impact 1, 2, 3, 10 small business owners, I feel it's a greater impact because I'm basically helping to save them from bankruptcy, or I'm helping to get them systems in place so that they can create general wealth for their family. And so I feel that's so much more of a greater impact. Yeah. Being able to make those changes.
Right. So let's dive into Hubner Consultant Limited. Yep. What exactly is that, and what are you doing for your clients that come to you?
Yeah. So I work with primarily real estate investors. Like I said, I had a lot of other industry experience previously, but I work mainly now with real estate, anything to do with real estate. And so we break your business down into the 4 main areas. We take a look at what are your accounting practices. We take a look at your operations, your sales and marketing, and your human resources. And what areas do we need to build, create, put systems in place for you to prepare for growth? You mentioned earlier, and this is exactly right, is that someone starts a business by buying a property, and then they buy 5 properties, and all of a sudden they have a booming business. They're creating good cash flow on a monthly basis, but they haven't put all those systems in place to actually start thinking of the business in those 4 categories.
Right.
And so what we do is we break it down. Okay, well, what needs to happen in operations? Like, where can we put duplicatable tasks in place so that you can just hit repeat on a project management software and have the same execution every time? taking a look at your sales and marketing. Like, what is your brand? What is your messaging? Do you have a clear communication strategy? How are you trying to get to the end user? What are you going for? Are you looking for private money right now? Are you looking for joint venture partners? Are you looking to just market yourself as an actual real estate coach? Then we take a look at your human resources. Do you have one person? Do you have 10 people? Are you doing performance reviews? Do you have accurate job descriptions? Are there things that are, missing, or is there a breakdown in communication within the team? Like, how are you lifting the team up and helping them with their own personal development? So we take a look at all those areas, and it's all a custom program. I don't do group stuff. I only do one-to-one. And we basically look at your business, dissect it apart, and then start building it up in those areas.
So let's kind of break down those 4 areas. So you got operations, sales, human resources. What was the fourth one?
Sales and marketing.
So operations, sales and marketing, human resources,
accounting, finances.
So operations
wants to forget. Yeah.
That's probably why I forgot it. Like, I don't like that side of my business at all. Let's talk about operations and where do you see a lot of people make their mistakes there, and what exactly does that mean, operations?
Yeah, so operations is how is your product getting out there. So let's take a look. It's specifically in real estate that you're doing a flip. A lot of things that you do within a flip are done time and time again. You can do the exact same step-by-step process within each of those flips that you're doing. So we create within a project management software, would create a template to say, okay, these are the repeatable tasks. This is every single time you sign a contract. These are the steps that we're doing. The other thing you can talk about as far as operations goes is, let's say that you've got a management company, right? And so how is your product or your service getting out there, right? What is the client journey along the way? What steps go into place to go from, hey, we've got a product that we're offering, and now it's going to get into the hands of a potential business owner who's going to now use your product. So we go through actually executing what that step looks like. We create standard operating procedures so that it doesn't matter if you're doing the work or your employees doing the work, they're getting the same delivery every single time.
So is operations kind of like the head of the business? Is it like saying, making sure that there's the right systems and processes for each of the departments?
Yeah. So it's like, how does your product get to the end user, right? So if you've got a property management company, how are you bringing in leasing people? What's the step-by-step process that a tenant is going to go through when they land on your desk to say, hey, I want to rent this apartment? What is the step-by-step process that they go through? Yeah, because those tasks are all repeatable.
Yeah, and also like defining roles.
Roles for sure.
Yeah, which is, because sometimes, say, hey, look, I'm really busy, so I just need to hire somebody else. And then you start throwing things at them, and it's not, it's just extra things, but it's not clearly defined or clearly outlined that, hey, you should be doing this, or maybe I need to hire somebody else as well too, because this is not part of that role. But it's always difficult in the beginning. It's also, do I have enough money?
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, that kind of feeds into human resources, right? So you might say, as a business owner, I'm pulling my hair out. I've got too many things to do. I'm totally overwhelmed. It's a word that I hear all the time. I'm totally overwhelmed. First place we start is with a high-low task list. What are the high-value tasks that you're doing on a weekly and daily basis? What are the low-value tasks? Let's take those low-value tasks, create a job description, and hire someone to fill that spot. Now that person who's in the new role is then going to do the operational type stuff. They're going to create the standard operating procedures because they're saying, hey, I'm bringing in a brand new tenant this month. What steps am I going to go through? They're going to create the standard operating procedures so we can see how HR is tied to operations. And now all of a sudden you've got a job description for the new person that you're hiring. And that person is going to then create a step-by-step process that fills down into the operations bucket.
Right.
Because the job description.
Right. And so now let's move into, I guess, sales and marketing. Yep. This is where all businesses potentially fail, is no revenue, right?
Yeah.
Or not letting everybody know out there, hey, this is what we do. This is the product. This is the services that we sell. Where do you see a lot of the mistakes happen there?
A lot of times, especially with new investors, is that number one, they're just scared about their story. They're scared to tell their story. So they're not entirely sure what they're marketing or who they're marketing to or what kind of projects they want to take on next. So, the marketing message kind of gets diluted because they think, well, what's the big deal? Like I did a property, like how should I be talking about this? And I'm just saying, share your story, like start building a story, start building your own personal brand, right? When I think of you, I know that you're in real estate in this area, and you've got a great podcast. And, so you're starting to build that actual brand. So a lot of times it's either the brand of that individual person or the brand of the company as a whole. Well, what does the company stand for? Maybe it is a faith-based company that specializes on, I don't know, multifamily properties and affordable housing, right? Like, so getting your messaging out there. So a lot of times they're not really sure what they're actually selling or looking for. And then on the sales side of things, kind of gets tied back into finance as well. Well, they want to be making sales, but they don't actually understand their cash flow. And so we don't actually know how many sales they made last month and how much that is more than the previous year. And B, what's your break even to run your business on a monthly basis? Do you even know that your fixed costs every month are $1,700? Right. And so if you're not bringing in more than that amount, you're going into a deficit each month.
Yeah.
And, really understanding. So again, the sales and marketing aspect is tied to accounting finance to make sure that you're really understanding the foundations of your business to say, hey, wait a minute, I only brought in $20,000 last month, but my business actually cost me $25,000 each month. So now I'm actually in the hole of $5,000. Well, that's why I feel so, cash poor, my bank account's in the negatives, but because the business grows so fast, people haven't taken the time to sit down and say, okay, hey, fixed costs on this property are X, fixed costs on this property are Y, right? And so it's really just taking a look at breaking the business down into each little category to figure out, okay, what's the monthly base? What's the monthly cost for this? And then what's the full cost of running the business? Right.
So is that where you see sometimes where a lot of businesses fail, is not really clearly defining what their brand is? Yeah.
Yeah. Not defining what their brand is, having a sort of a lack of confidence in talking about what they're doing. You can go into the pretty aspect of marketing, the branding and the fonts and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's not necessarily it. You need to focus in on first, like what are you here for? What are you trying to reach people? What's your goal of You're going to jump on Instagram Live. Well, what's your goal? Are you hoping to bring in a new conversation with a potential investor? Or are you hoping to share the struggles that you had on the last flip that you did because, I don't know, the windows were 6 months delayed or something like that, right? So really understanding, like, are you trying to educate people? Are you trying to give people confidence? What's the actual purpose of getting on that?
Yeah. I think it's really important to define that, right? Like, what is your story? What do you, what's in your core? What do you believe in? Because I think once you can figure that out, then, you're starting to work in your genius or what you're good at. And then now you're just sharing that story. Now, sharing the story is always a hard part because now you're like, I don't want to go on camera, or what are people going to think about me? Or, I said this and I should have said that. I mean, listen, man, I go through it all the time. I look at the video and I'm like, oh, I don't like that video, but it's out there anyways. And really, I think a lot of times you're in competition with yourself. At least that's the way that I'm trying to look at it now. Is I'm like, okay, I did like that. I can improve next time, but I think it's about getting it out there. Getting
out there, getting started, feel confident in sharing the story. Like, sure, you started at one property and now you're at 10 property. That's huge. That's a really big success, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need to share all the glamorous stuff too, right? Because people want to see the real side of things.
Yeah.
As far as the marketing goes, it really is like just starting somewhere, getting comfortable. I've done lots of, different interviews, or also presenting to different, groups and things. And everyone is the first place to start. Like, what do I say?
Yeah.
Tell them about your journey, right? I'll tell you right now that, we made a mistake in Mexico. I should have not been on title for the first time because you get a tax break on the first sale of your property. So I should have just left it in my husband's name. I should have done the next project, but that's something that we learned. So you talk about those things, but until you really understand, what is my brand or my business and what I'm here for, it's really hard to start pulling stuff.
Yeah. And you know what, you touched on something really important there, is that you people want to also know your mistakes, not just your success.
Yeah.
But that also that you're human, that you made mistakes, and here is what you did, and I should have done it like that. I find those videos, I usually get a lot more reaction out of it. Like, oh,
for sure,
he made a mistake, and he's sharing it. He's not only just always winning, he also loses and fails as well too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then, okay. So we've touched on operation. We touched on sales. Let's touch on, did we touch on human resources? We touched on
a little bit. So, with
Yeah.
human resources, a lot of times like I said, the number one word that I hear from investors is they're overwhelmed. Business has grown so fast. They haven't put any systems in place. And now they've got 10 properties. They don't know what their break even is on a monthly base. And they're kind of sitting there going, okay, well, I've got to organize this business quickly. Otherwise it's going to get too messy and too big. And so as far as the human resource goes, that's what we first do is we take a look. Where do you have help? Do you have support? What's your, zone of genius? What areas do we need to remove off your plate? I'll tell you right now, I have help with social media. I like social media, but I don't like doing all the posting and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I outsourced because I realized that was a big energy drain and time drain for me. So I have an amazing social media team that helps me with posting. Boom, fantastic. Now I've freed up my time for other things. And a lot of people think, especially when you go from employee to entrepreneur, I got to do it myself. I got to do everything myself.
Now, when you say human resources, though, does that mean that you're hiring somebody new, or is it putting processes in place?
It's both. It depends where you are in the business. So if you have a team of people working with you already, that's great. We will make sure that you are, up to snuff as far as, do you have job descriptions? Do you have KPIs? Are you doing annual performance reviews? Right? A lot of times we aren't doing these things and we're sitting there scratching our head as business owners saying, I'm super frustrated. This employee is underperforming. I'm paying a lot of my hard-earned dollars to this employee and I'm not seeing the results I'm looking for. So my first question is, okay, do they know what they're supposed to do? Well, yeah, I've told them. Okay. Do you have it in writing? Do you have a job description? And have you verbally communicated it? And a lot of times they're like, well, I've told them. Like, okay, well, it needs to be in writing, it needs to be verbal, and it needs to be in a written document of what the expectation is for them. Because we can't really go back to them and say you're not performing when they have either forgotten, they haven't, hasn't been clear in the first place. So we take a look where you're at. Do you need to put those processes in place? Do you need to have a job description? Does the employee need to write the job description for you? Right. Quite often as a business owner, like, well, I got to write these job descriptions and I can't stand this piece because it's HR and I don't like HR. You've got somebody who's been doing the job for 6 months. Get them to write it.
That's such an important piece right there. I know when we did that, when we started having them, like, because we lost a couple of people and now I had to retrain them and there was no manual. And so then now, a year goes by and I'm like, I don't remember how to do that particular role in my business.
Yep.
Right. And so, you hit an important part is like, sometimes it's okay. Like, maybe in the beginning you can clearly define that role. Yeah. But if somebody's there, they can start to help define it for you as well, create the documentation, where to go. Right. And those are important things, again, that you learn from that corporate world.
Absolutely. And perfect example is you've got someone who has now written their job description. They know what they're doing. Now you as the owner, as well as the employee, are talking about what the metrics are on a quarterly basis. Like, okay, yes, I'm achieving what I'm supposed to be doing. Here's a list of things I'm doing. And then this employee that you think is like your unicorn employee is like, hey, I'm going to work for Gary's company now because I like what he's offering and I want to learn a few new things. And you think, okay, well, as far as professional development goes, okay, this person is now exiting my corporation and now they're taking all those skills with them. So if you don't have a clear job description and a role of responsibilities, the stuff that they've been doing, you're back at zero because you don't know what they've been doing. And so now if you have that nice tight job description, you basically just go online, look for your next employee, fill that job description because you've gotten it all written down there with all the roles and responsibilities, and boom, you can slot your next person in there.
Yeah, so huge. Such an important piece. I think it took us maybe 3 employees later, like, why don't we have this properly defined?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So they took all those skills with them that are, relevant to your business.
Yeah.
And you want to have that all captured without a doubt. And some people aren't there yet. Some people don't have any employees. And so that's fine. They're dealing still in that phase of like 1 to 10 properties. They're still in overwhelm. Right. So as soon as they create that high-low task, we take those low value tasks and I will help them hire their first person. I can help do interviews with them. I can help them create the job description. We'll get that first person in place so that they can start taking away some of that overwhelm.
And let's dig a little deeper into that before we move on to accounting and finances. So what do you see the biggest challenge when somebody's right at the cusp of hiring their first admin? That's always the scariest part, I think, of the business. Like, I don't feel like I have enough money to pay this person,
Yeah.
but if I get this other person, it'll free up time for me to potentially create more sales and work on more marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the first thing that I see is that people don't know what tasks that person should do because they're still, like I said, in that overwhelm. They don't have their list of things that, okay, well, what drives my business forward? Coffees with potential investors. That's going to drive my business forward, right? Email marketing, not going to drive my business as much as coffee with an investor. I'm going to help someone. I'm going to write the email. Then I'm going to get someone to help me with the execution of it. So really dividing those tasks and saying, okay, wait a minute. Is this helping me meet my objective? Is it yes? Is it no? And then that's where you start creating the actual roles and responsibilities for that potential person that's coming in. And the other thing too, I see is that people are like, I hired my first admin. I'm so pumped. Like, great. What are they doing? I don't know. I don't know. I've got a whole list of things and I just rapid fire them stuff each day and there's no real consistency and stuff, right? So what happens is that new employee gets super frustrated because they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. There's not much direction here. There's a lack of leadership. And so I'm sitting here for 10 or 20 hours a week, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. I should be supposed to be making stuff up as I go, but I don't really know the business yet because I've only been here for 3 months. So those are the things that I see happening too, is that then everyone gets frustrated.
Yeah. And then they hire them as well too. And now they want them to do marketing. Then they also want them to do some sales. And then they want them to do admin. And then you know what? I want you to do some bookkeeping for me too. And then, and then all of a sudden now, you're trying to take the hats off your head and then giving it to your admin. And then they're overwhelmed because they're taking on these different roles and responsibilities. I think that's sometimes where it gets a little tricky, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's very possible that admin can help you with 3 of those different functions and things. But again, it needs to kind of all go on that clear job description of what are they responsible for? Right. Nobody likes getting in trouble for things that they didn't know they were supposed to be doing. Yeah. And then you get the communication dropped as well.
So let's move into accounting and financing. Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's always the part where it can be difficult for, there's obviously different types of personalities out there. For me, financing and accounting want nothing to do with it. I understand the importance of it. So then, how does that piece work now in that business? Do you need to hire somebody with a certain skill set in that area? Or do you sometimes maybe just keep that task on your own desk?
A lot of times you keep the task on your own desk with support of a bookkeeper and an accountant. But a lot of times we're starting at the really, basics. Like I'm working on a big spreadsheet right now that is going to tell you, and I hired someone to help me with this because I like Excel, but I'm not an expert at it. So, it's a snapshot of your entire property. What are the monthly costs? Like this is something that you did when you were probably analyzing the property in the first place. But have you updated in the last 3 years since you bought the place? The numbers have totally changed. Do you realize now that, the initial cash flow you had on the property was say $950? Do you realize now that it's $550, right? This is something that you talk a lot about too, right? Really understanding where your portfolio is at with the changes that we faced recently. Like what is your break even on every single property? And then once you know that question, answer that question, you know how much you need to make every single month. And then you take it the next step forward, right? Like where are all those transactions going? Are they going to one bank account? Are they going to a bank account for each different property? Are they going into 2 different corporations? Like then what's the routing? So we take a look at where's the income from that property going? Is it being routed to the right account right now? And if it's not, how can we change that to make things smoother and more effective for you? Right. And then same thing is that we'll take a look like, do you need to hire a bookkeeper? Is it time? Are you up to date in your finances? Have you reconciled in the last year, quarter? Have you completed your last couple of year ends? Those are all things that are all brand new moving targets for a lot of people that haven't run that side of the business before. So, it can be as simple as how are you capturing receipts to how are you writing all of your income and your expenses through to do you know how much your business costs you every single month?
Yeah, that's an important piece that you just said right there at the end. Like how much is your business costing you at the end of every month? Because sometimes you get so caught up in concentrating on the revenue piece
Yeah.
You're not seeing what's happening on the expense side. And that expense side is growing because you're throwing money at it. Like, okay, let's do some more marketing. Okay, let's do some more bump ups in whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden your expenses, you don't even realize it because that, oh, well, I brought somebody a new one. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for a database or CRM and those little $100 here and $200 there, they add up.
Those subscription clicks. Oh yeah.
Quick. I know. I feel it all the time. And we got to take a step back as well, too, in our own business and take a look at, okay, what can we cut and and what do we need to take on? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of times too, with the overwhelming amount of software these days, right? Well, your software can be compressed. If you're using Asana for product management, can you also use it for your CRM? Do you need it to be that robust? Do you need a separate CRM? Maybe you do, because maybe you're really working on growing your list right now and you're looking at, you're doing a big call for investors soon. So you're really pumping that up. A lot of times we're just jumping on the next fancy thing because we think it's going to help solve all these problems. But in actual fact, then boom, all of a sudden you're down $500 because you hit subscribe, and then there you go.
Yeah.
I had no clue that I was paying this much every single month on subscriptions that I'm hardly using.
Right. What are some important, would you say, maybe applications or, I guess we'll say applications that you see a lot of real estate investors not have, where they're just completely missing it from their business?
I would say some people in the early stages haven't invested in QuickBooks Online or a software program. They're still using Excel spreadsheet. I say, get yourself set up with one property, get yourself set up, spend the $42 a month or something like that to make your life a lot easier, for sure. I would say that. The other one that I would say is that the CRM. So you're meeting real estate investors, you're meeting realtors, you're meeting contractors every single week. Well, where are you capturing them? Just in your phone? It's not going to be a robust enough list when you're like, I met someone in Ajax last week and his name started with an M. Where can I find him again? Right? Get that into your CRM. Put all your contacts into your CRM. The thing that I love, my favorite thing about CRM is that you can keep track of all of your email communications. So it keeps you in touch with what's going on. You don't have to sit there searching your email box to say, hey, did I send Michael an email about getting the quote? You can jump into your CRM, check out Michael, and you can see right there that you've got your email captured.
CRM is so important. They really are. I know when we started off with MailChimp. Then we moved into Infusionsoft, which is now Keep. And now, because I've grown my real estate team, we're now in Follow Boss. I think Follow Boss is absolutely incredible, where it almost takes a lot of the work out of the equation, where my team now wakes up and they know exactly who they got to contact based on the last time they had communication with them, and depending on whether or not they're in a hot bucket, a medium, or a cold, or whatever it may be. And that's what you're alluding to, is how important that CRM is. Yeah. Because you can't remember it all, as opposed to like, I should call Kim. I haven't talked to Kim in a while.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's impossible to keep track, especially as you really start growing your business, growing your name in the industry, start networking and stuff. Yeah, a robust CRM, I think, is completely underutilized at this point in time, without a doubt. It makes things so much easier. The other thing, too, is that if you've got a team that's working with you, you don't want to be asking, hey, did you follow up with Kim? You can just log into the CRM and see exactly where the communication lies.
Right. Are there any other CRMs that you recommend that you've used, or you've seen other real estate investors? Yeah, I've used HubSpot. There's a CRM component of Asana and ClickUp and Monday.com. Those are all great as well. And I've definitely played in all of those. Yeah. It depends on the business. We're using ClickUp for one of our businesses right now. We're using Asana for another business. Those are all great options as well. And there's a lot of free versions as well too. Okay. You can start, there's a free version of HubSpot. Super easy. So if somebody's listening to this right now, what are a couple things that they can do right now to tweak their business? Right? Just like some little small tips and saying, hey, just turn this dial here and turn that dial there. And you can really start to see some great improvements in your real estate business.
Number one, I would say, is to understand your finances.
Yeah.
It is such a hot topic in this industry right now, right? There are people that are doing really well and there's people that are struggling, and it just breaks my heart to see them struggle. I don't want that for anyone. So number one is understand your finances, how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, what are your fixed costs, so that you really know your business. And then number two, as I would say, is the overwhelm, is that a lot of people are still juggling 9 to 5s. They haven't become full-time real estate investors yet. So, okay, take a look, do your high-low. What are my high value tasks? Where are my low value tasks? Is it time to start outsourcing some of those low value tasks to an assistant, a virtual assistant, a bookkeeper? Like, where are you really getting hung up and not being efficient?
Yeah. You know what? That's also a good way to also kind of slowly move into it. If you're new and you're starting to get overwhelmed, where you have that 9 to 5 job and you're trying to move into that entrepreneur world, is getting that virtual assistance, right? Because sometimes they can be a little bit cheaper. But where do you see people make mistakes with that virtual assistant? And is there a difference between VA and having an actual, we'll say, somebody that is close to where you're working or where your business is, or maybe even in your home or in your office?
Yeah. I mean, most people just need someone who, it doesn't matter where they are. It could be remote, could be a different time zone, etc. I think the biggest mistake is that people don't really have a clear function of what they want them to do. So spend 2 weeks on a time audit, figure out what your low value task is, your high value task, figure out what you're going to create a list, a job description for this person before you hire them. Because then you know what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who's got these skill sets that you really need, help with right away. I don't think it matters geographically where they are, unless you have an office space that you want someone in the office with you. A lot of us work at home. But again, I mean, I've only ever worked from home, even in the corporate world, because I'm in BC. I'm not in Ontario, the center of all the big corporate hubs. So you do need to make sure that person obviously is going to be kind of self-motivated. And when you move from the employee to entrepreneur, you have to learn how to become that self-motivated, driven. And a lot of people are, but still it's a lot of areas where people struggle too. So do you need to go to a separate office space? Do you need to have someone beside you? Like, knowing how you work best is also really important.
That's actually another good point as well too, is also, when you are an entrepreneur, is to be self-driven, is to get up and show up, because you are no longer, you're not reporting to anybody. You're reporting to yourself. Yeah. And so are you driven? Do you have the drive to get up and do the work, or to stay later, or to stay longer to get the work done? Because in the beginning, it's not easy at all, right? Yeah. And you can make as much money as you want, potentially, if you've got a good product or service, or, you can crash and burn real fast and real quick.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a big change when you're now all of a sudden working for yourself and you are the one who's driving everything forward. And now you're responsible for someone else's livelihood too, right? You hired someone at 20 hours a week, and now you need to pay them every week. Well, they need to know what they're doing first, because that's going to create a lot of frustration. But yeah, it just really, it's, and that's why you need to know your finances first before you say, hey, I'm going to hire someone. Do I have the money in the business? Am I going to look to invest the money in the business? How is this all working?
Yeah. And sometimes even in the beginning, it's okay just to work from home. I think sometimes, when they transition, they think they've got to get this office, and then now they've got to get, spend all this money. And when it's okay to just work from home in the beginning, keep some of your expenses low.
Absolutely.
And kind of get that ball rolling, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the accounting finance piece, right? Knowing your numbers. Okay, do I have, or even just knowing yourself. How do you know yourself? Like, are you going to be a self-starter at home? If you're not, then you might need to rent a temporary office space.
Yes.
Right. And so just really understanding how you work best is going to be really important for you as well.
Yeah, that's important as well. Yeah. Like, I mean, even for me, right? Like, when I get up in the morning, I still go take my shower. I still get dressed.
Yeah.
I'm ready to perform.
Yeah.
Because it can be very easy sometimes. And I'm sure, depending, again, what you're saying, like, depending on that individual, if you're all of a sudden now just in your t-shirt and jogging pants, is that going to fire you up? Maybe some people can work like that, but maybe some other people, where they've been in that corporate world for so long, they still need to dress up and show up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think COVID taught us a lot how to work from home. That's for sure.
Yeah,
right. But yeah, really understanding your own personality style and really understanding what motivates you and what's going to turn the dial. And maybe, when I have my early morning calls at a coffee shop nearby, I see the same couple of people there chipping away at their computer at 6:37 in the morning, because obviously that's what works best for them, right? They're not on calls or anything like that. They're just sitting there pounding out what they need to be doing, but they know that they work best from the coffee shop at that point of the day. And so that's why they're there, showing up for themselves. Yeah.
What do you recommend that, somebody who's starting off being into the entrepreneurial world, how do they start their day? I think that's always a tricky thing, especially that first transition. I know it took me a while to kind of figure out, to get my groove of what my day is going to look like, especially more in the morning as well, too, because that really kind of can sometimes change the way that day goes or even the week.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've done lots of phases. If I'm going to get up, I'm going to do 10 minutes of stretching here. I'm going to have a liter of lemon water first. I've done lots of those things now because I've done that for so long. I know exactly what I need when I wake up. I'm like, how am I feeling today? Check in with myself. Am I feeling like the change in the weather? Am I feeling really tired from last night because I have a young child? Or checking in with yourself is the biggest one. Right. And then really, what do you need next? And I always want people to have a tool, like a toolkit, basically. These are the things that really amp me up or get me motivated. Number 1, hot coffee. Number 2, a 10-minute meditation. Number 3, journaling. Number 4, pulling an oracle card, maybe. And so really understanding what is in your toolbox to fire you up, and then really tuning in. So if it works for you to say every single day, I'm going to drink a liter of water, do 10 minutes of stretching, a 20-minute meditation, and then, make an egg, whatever it is, right? So you just need to know yourself. So get your toolbox ready. What are the things that fire you up? And then tap into, okay, do I need to have things the exact same every single day? I had an employee who had half a cup of oatmeal with 4 dates and 2 almonds every single day. That doesn't work for me. But that worked great for him. So really knowing what you need in the morning is going to be the best thing. But I really think that list of tools in your toolbox is going to be the best. The other thing that I recommend for people to do is look for a pattern interrupt. If you are in that funk because the morning didn't work for you or the kids were all yelling, if you're in that funk, what is going to interrupt your pattern for the day and not let it ruin your day? And going back to that toolbox, is it a meditation? Is it a 10-minute walk? Is it your favorite song?
Do you recommend, so it sounds like you should almost have like an hour to yourself in the morning. Do you ever recommend where you just jump up and start working?
If you can do it and that works for you because you know how you work, go for it. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm in BC. You guys, you've all been working for 3 hours before I even up, right? So yeah, if it works for you, I'd say absolutely go for it. Some people are night owls and they want to put the kids in the house to bed first, and then they want to go for 2 more hours. That does not work for me.
Right. Yeah. So you got to kind of know what works for you. And sometimes, it could be an age thing. Because I know when I first started, our business, Smart Home Choice, I was a night owl. But it was also because I had a 9-to-5 job. And so when I came home, I was working your time. 1, 2 in the morning, getting up and then going back to work. Now I find like where I'm at now in the stage is like now I'm waking up earlier and I'm going to bed earlier.
Yeah.
I don't
Nothing to do with your age, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure it does. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with my age, right? But I think it also, I think you're right, though. It really depends on your personality. I know for me now, I like to at least have an hour to myself. Mm-hmm. Whether it be working out, whether it be going for a walk, whether it just be sitting down, having a coffee and having, a conversation with my wife. But, I kind of like to have just an hour just to kind of figure things out. And then I spend a little bit more time just before I start on designing my day. Like, what is my day going to look like? Knowing that, yes, sometimes things get thrown in there, but if you can plan that day out to say, and this is how I want it to look, it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, I would even argue that those things should be done the night before. Yeah. And so you don't have to wake up and spend the hour focusing on what you're going to do today. You already know, you wake up, it's Friday. I'm doing accounting reconciling. I am doing quarterly reviews, and I'm, analyzing 5 properties. It's Friday. That's what I do on Fridays.
I think that's a good point. I can't remember who said it, but essentially what it does as well too, when you write it down the night before, is while you're sleeping, sometimes your brain will help figure that problem out for you. You wake up like, oh, okay, boom. Yes. I got a better idea.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's say now, somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, I like what Meghan has to say.
Yeah.
What's kind of like the first step, and what does that look like working with you? Is this like a week program? Question. Is it a few months? Is it a year? Do I have you for life?
Yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Good questions. It is a 6-month minimum to work together. We have different positions. So you could have a single position spot, which is at 1 weekly call, monthly WhatsApp support Monday to Friday, and then email communication as well. So we meet at the same time. I try and keep it pretty consistent, same time every single week for 6 months. Within that time, the first 6 to 8 weeks, we're just going to peel back the layers of your business. What is going on? What's the current situation? Where do we need to go? What's the goal? And then after that, after about 6 weeks, once we've really dove into the business and really started to understand it, we start creating plans. Okay, what kind of strategic marketing plan in place do we need to have? Wait a minute. We're not at marketing yet. We're still at accounting. Okay, let's stay in accounting right now until we figure out what your numbers are, how much your fixed costs are, where your money is coming to and going and flowing to. But then we've also got HR issues. So we're going to combine those at the same time. So we tend to work on those 4 buckets for the entire amount of time. Most people stick with me for anywhere from my longest standing clients, about 3 years, but most people around 9 months to do the work, depending on the size of their business. I had a question recently, like, when do you want to capture people? Well, ideally I capture them earlier than later, because then we get a solid business foundation in to prepare them for that growth, rather than getting to the growth phase and then working back to say, okay, wait a minute, we got to break down all of these things now. Mm-hmm. So it's a 6-month minimum. It's a 1-hour position. If you've got 2 people on your team, you've got a staff that you want trained as well, you can add 2 positions or 3 positions. Again, same thing. Everyone gets a weekly call. Everyone gets WhatsApp support, email communication for me to look at job descriptions, or, pop on an interview when you're looking to hire someone. Those types of things are areas that I all support.
So what do you mean when you say everybody gets a call? So let's say now I have a team of 5 people.
So that would be five positions. So you would have a package that is 5 positions a week. So that would be yourself and then your staff, if you want them trained as well. The other thing you could do is you could have your weekly position and you could have 1 weekly position for staff. So if you have an accounting department, we can work with that person for the first 3 months. And then the second 3 months, we could work with, say, your HR team or your marketing team, etc.
Got it. Now, how large of a business size will you go up to?
It's a good question. I'm a single person, so if it's a staff of 20, I would probably need to have support. Right. But I would then just outsource that kind of thing. I wouldn't say that there's any maximum at this point in time. If you came to me with 100 employees, we'd make a plan that's unique to you, which is why I work just 1-to-1 with people. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Every business is so unique.
Yeah, for sure. I just thought of something as well, too. And I think this is also a big problem, at least I know for me from time to time, is notification. And I've turned off quite a bit of my notifications on my phone. Is that where you see a lot of entrepreneurs have issues because they don't want to miss potential business, where it's coming in from WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, Facebook, email,
we're inundated these days.
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always recommend people have a clear communication strategy. Like with your team, you might keep it all in Slack, right? And so that if you're switching off for the weekends, that the Slack messages can wait, because that's all where your team is sitting. Notifications, absolutely. If they're taking over your life, turn them off without a doubt. Or maybe you only, the reason I do WhatsApp communication is because I want people to have quick, rapid response. So I'll usually get back to people within hours to 2 hours, depending if I'm on calls myself. But it's also training the people that you're working with and your clients too. Yeah.
Yeah. Notification is such an important piece. And sometimes it can really kind of break you, because now you're working on something and all of a sudden you get this notification from Instagram and the alarm sounds urgent.
Yeah.
But it's like it's your friend who posted a video about, I don't know, some cat.
A dog or toddler or something. Yeah.
and that's where you really got to be careful, I think I read something, and correct me if I'm wrong here, where it almost takes you sometimes 10 to 15 minutes to get back into your train of thought.
Yeah, I think it's even more than that. I feel like it's like 21 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long time. If you're really doing that focused work and things, and you get all those notifications, those inundated, coming in, unless it's like a phone call from the school. Those are ones you want to answer, of course, right? But you can set your notifications on those. I do recommend time blocking a lot for sure.
Yeah, time blocking, do not disturb times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then again, it goes back to how well do you know yourself as an employee, right? Do you know that every single time there's a beep, you're getting distracted? Well, you gotta turn your ringer off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Or maybe they don't bother you. That's fine too. Just know yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything we did not cover, or where, it's really important for somebody who's moving into this space in the real estate investing world, or the entrepreneurial world, that, be careful of this pitfall, be careful of this mistake, what you see all the time happening with your clients?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest thing is the finances.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. And it could be anything, right? It could be from them not having an accounting software set up yet, to them not really understanding where their numbers are at right now, to lack of clarity in the whole portfolio. I think if anything, I can encourage anyone is to understand your numbers on a deep level, so that you know what the business is costing you, what your properties are costing you, kind of where your goal is and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, that's really important. Do you ever see anybody quitting too early their full-time job to go into their entrepreneurial world?
Oh yeah, isn't it? You must see this too, right?
Yeah.
They've gotten so excited, they're really feeling fired up. But then there's, and you might be on the high, right? Entrepreneurship is the darn roller coaster, right? You're going to feel top of the world one day. The day that you quit your job, you're going to feel top of the world. You're going to think, I can achieve anything. And then the next day something happens that derails it. And you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Yeah. Right. So you have to be prepared for that roller coaster. So yeah, I would say, wait until you know your numbers, really understand what your own personal expenses are, what you need, and then where you want to go.
Yeah, I remember Jim Rohn had this quote. He said, "Don't quit your full-time job until your part-time job becomes your full-time job."
Yeah, yeah.
Because when you go to those networking events, you go to a mastermind event, and you go there for the first or the second time, you're like, "This is the life I want to live. F my boss." And then you go home that night and you flip that email, and all of a sudden you're like, "What did I just do?"
Whoa. Okay, yeah. I just committed, and then people get scared, right? And then fear leads to inaction. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're spinning.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't take long to just sit there and start spinning if you don't have clearly defined goals, objectives, and where you're really trying to go with this. Because, I've said this before too, like, yes, I'm into real estate investing, but I also don't love real estate investing. It was just a great vehicle. It's not, it doesn't define me. This is a vehicle that I use. And so what else am I building out of this entrepreneur world, this business that I've created for myself? And so you got to really get clear on your goals and why, and your why. Your why is incredibly important. Yeah, absolutely. Your why is incredibly important. It's, it's going to be the driver for you every single day. Like you said, you wake up, you want that hour to yourself. If you've got the hour, fantastic. If you don't have the hour, that why needs to be so strong, because you're going to trudge through the mud first, and then you're going to stumble here, and, really, and then same thing with your community, being connected to the community to make sure that, everyone is traveling along the same path. Because this is one thing that I say to people often is that, if you walk in and say, hey, I want to land an 85,000 or I want to have an $85 million portfolio. That is my goal. And a lot of your friends and your family and your circle, as much as they love you, they're like, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Right. And so all of a sudden you're getting brought down again. Yeah. That's like crab in the bucket mentality. And it's not that they don't want you to succeed. Totally. They're actually trying to protect you. Yes. Because they're not going to the same rooms that you're going to, or talking to the same people, or, like, hey, be careful, man. They're like, this is a scam, or it's this, or whatever it may be. Right? Yes. Oh, 100%. Then you go into any of these meetups, real estate investors, and you meeting with some big people, and they're like, yeah, right on. How are you going to get there? What are you going to do? What's your strategy? Yeah. Right. They're not going to question anything other than that. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, absolutely. Meghan, this was a great conversation. I think this is really important for a lot of real estate investors that are getting into this game. And especially with everything that's happening right now, where, some people quit their full-time jobs during this time, and interest rates have gone up, and now they're like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I pivot? Listen, even for myself, and I share this as well too, is that, I've had to pivot a little bit harder into more active income.
Yeah.
But you have to know, and listen, I tell you this, I realized that I thought I had a recession-proof business. Wrong. I didn't plan for 11 interest rate hikes. So I've had to shift and pivot, Yeah, of course. So, yeah. And sometimes you got to have those backup plans, or, how can you maneuver within your business model?
Yep. Yeah. And knowing your business model, knowing your numbers, understanding your business as it relates to those 4 buckets is going to help you make those strategic decisions of which way to go next, or what decisions you need to make from a high level, right? Business owners, we want you to stay up here. We don't want you in the weeds, making all the small decisions. Yeah. Right. We want to stay up here so you can stay high level, making sure that you're making good long-term goals and strategies for the business.
Absolutely. And I heard this as well too from one of my coaches, is that, you should be firing yourself every 4 or 5 years, meaning that, you're growing. You should now have other people, whether it be filling those previous roles that you were doing, so you can continue to not work in your business, but on your business. Yes, exactly. Right. That's the high level stuff, is working on it. Yeah. Any last piece of advice, Meghan?
I think the biggest thing, you guys, is just to really start looking at your business as a business, right? It doesn't matter if you have 1 property or if you have 101 properties, you have a business. And so the faster you start to look at it that way, and the other thing it's going to do is that's going to give you the confidence to start making some of those bigger type decisions and bigger steps and things too. So recognize you've got a business, start treating it as one, and really get yourself, in a position for growth.
Yes. Treat it like a business.
Yeah.
Great words of advice. Listen, I've enjoyed this talk with you. How can people get a hold of you if you want to learn more about what you do, or they're like, I need your service, I need you to help me?
Yeah, run over to my website. You can grab a complimentary call there. We'll book a quick strategy session for 30 minutes. It usually takes about an hour, to be honest, by the time we dive into your business. So you can go over to my website at meghanhubner.com, grab your call there. I'm also quite active on Instagram at Meghan Hubner. It's MEGHANHUBNER. And the other place that you'll see me is on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Meghan, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And it's been great getting to know you, and thank you for your friendship.
You're welcome. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I'm glad, social media is a great place. I've met some incredible people, and you're in the top of the list. So thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Have a great day.
You too.
Today's show brought to you by Rent Panda. Rent Panda helps landlords go from listing to lease without wasted time or headaches along the way. Rent Panda provides the do-it-yourself landlord, which is an online platform where you can list your property for free, post your ad on multiple platforms, see tenant profiles, message tenants, schedule showings, get credit checks, build leases quickly and easily. Rent Panda also caters to the more passive landlord who needs to find a tenant, doing all of the leasing work, so all you have to do is sit back and get the best tenants presented to you.
Thanks for listening to today's show with Gary Hibbert. Please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with your host on Instagram at Gary Hibbert. Until next time, stay mindful and remember, you don't have to be great to start. Just start, and you'll be on the path to being great.